I mean, I did get the call from Andrea this morning. Most of you know Andrea is a nurse, a registered nurse, and she's a visiting home nurse. And so the COVID situation has impacted that greatly. And the reason she couldn't make it this morning and has so many appointments stacked up is there's a shortage of nurses. As cases grow and as healthcare workers get sick themselves, it's putting pressure on the system. And I mention this not just so that we can acknowledge Andrea and hold her in our circle, but in talking, I was reminded of some little tricks, because she was like, I haven't had time to sit, and how do I do this? How do I get through this day? And I offered up a little trick for practice that we can all use, and that's to pick some physical cue that gives you permission to take 30 seconds or a minute or whatever length of time you can to just do kind of, speed zazen, or just a moment of collecting yourself and centering yourself and claiming that calm, pure, essential nature that we have without the reaction to everything going on. And so for Andrea this morning, and you can picture her now as we go through the rest of the morning, I crafted this exercise. I said, so when you arrive at the next location, when you turn off the ignition, stop and collect yourself, do a moment of zazen. When you finish with the appointment, when the key goes into the ignition, do the same. And she was like, oh. And so I just wanted to remind us all of that simple gift that we can give ourselves and everyone around us, of just, even if it's just for a moment, using something to cue that behavior, which is really cueing a touch in or remembrance of who we naturally are. So anyway, hopefully that will work for Andrea. It's good to see everybody. Winston, welcome back. Tennessee, great to have you on screen. Brandon, always wonderful to have you. Hi. And everybody, of course, thank you for being here. In the newsletter this week, I kind of honored New York City, and but also told some tales on myself in many ways of life and learnings in New York City. And I always found the subway to be a wonderful reflection of where I was at in the city. And it always continues to be that way. Because there's that urban and human disconnection that we throw up as a protection mechanism. Okay, it happens to be pronounced when you're in a subway car sitting across from someone. And if you happen to be a Zen student or an out-of-towner, you sometimes are tempted to look across the way and actually connect with someone. And you don't always get, and very rarely get, the result that you might want. If you're an out-of-towner, generally you're more tanned and looking more relaxed, so you get a little bit of a pass, right? If you're just an enthusiastic Zen student wanting to connect with people, you might very well, and it's a bit of a cliche, but I've heard it many times, you looking at me? Because it's like that connection suddenly is a threat, that in this space that is carved out to withdraw and to not be connected. And then as I told the tale in the newsletter, then the next stop, the doors open and a classroom full of school children come in, and it's like magic, because the joy and the giggling and the enthusiasm of Roma and her friends dissolves that disconnection, if only for so many moments. But you see people soften up, and all of a sudden people smiling, and they're given permission to connect. you know, I did include, and I hope it was okay, but I did include a story in there too of me after a meeting with my boss in the ad world over a couple of drinks, you know, laid on the subway and not in an entirely clear and sober state of mind, but this guy across on the seat, literally sliding off the seat, completely drunk and hitting his head on the way down, and lying there in the middle of the subway car. And of course, I jumped up. I had the wits still about me to jump up and reach out and help him back onto his seat. But as I settled back into mine, I had this intense and unpleasant and big warning sense of connection going up. It's going like, okay, so what's the difference between me and the person I just picked up? You know, another sip? You know, a different kind of connection and a different kind of lesson. And then some of the assumptions that we make and the fears that we create in the story of, you know, being stuck under the East River, the subway car is stalled, the doors burst open from one end of the car. If you've ever, you know, been on the subway in New York, you can move from car to car. And these four big guys come in and just stop there at the end of the car. And everybody's trying really hard not to look and to keep that distance, right? Don't make eye contact. Whatever you do, don't make eye contact. And then they burst out into the most beautiful a cappella, you know, and assumptions and delusions, to use the Zen words, were shattered, because all of a sudden what was seen as an intrusion or felt as a threat became beauty and human voice and human connection. So, you know, these kinds of stories are important to me because, you know, they reveal how we might see the world and how the world really is, what our assumptions are and how they are often wrong. And then as I ended the little bit of writing was, in most instances, there's a choice. There's a choice of how we receive the world. And here's the thing, nobody else makes that choice for us. It's for each of us to choose how we receive what comes at us, how we react, how we respond, how we don't react, how we don't respond, what we let our mind do to us as it spins the tale that it is want to spin in our heads. Roma, when I was about your age, I'm not sure I would say my ears were bigger, but maybe my head was smaller. And I hadn't yet had my orthodontistry work. So I had two buck teeth that really stuck out. And there was this younger kid in the playground that always used to run up to me, and he'd run up and go, "Buck teeth, monkey ears," and run away. And it was horrible. I mean, I didn't have any training, any grounding, any guidance on what to do with that. You know, my dad might have said, well, just buck it up and don't pay attention, right? But again, even at an early age, these things are thrown at us. And then how do we respond? How do we respond? Many, many years later, when I was running the agency, I happened to see on an online blog, and I don't even know if I've shared this with you, because every time I think about it, it still really hurts. But like, somebody was complaining about my management, or what they thought was mismanagement of the agency. And they described me as that little bald monkey running around.
Whoa.
You know? So Roma, there's that schoolyard taunt still with me as an adult. And what do we do with that? What do we do with that? You know, who chooses? Of course, we all do choose. And then when I came to the practice first, and I think this is one of the biggest gifts for me, and Winston, I think you might like this, is discovering the difference between control and choice. Because until I sat down and really started doing Zazen, I thought it was about control. How do you control the buck-teeth monkey ears people, right? You get more power, you get more experience, you get more skill, and you start controlling everything around you. You control it to remove the hurt, you control it to remove the surprise, you control it to succeed, you control it to win. You position yourself on the subway car so that you're the first out of the door, right where the stairs come out of the platform. Because as I used to say, if you're first, there is no line. I mean, that is a ruthlessly competitive way to view life. And it's about control. And when I started sitting Zazen, I started seeing that maybe that locking down was locking too many things down, locking me down, locking people around me down. And maybe a more expansive way to do this was to learn how to experience life fully, to learn how to see it clearly, and to get skillful about the choices I made and how to react to it. So the difference between control and choice. You know, because changing the course of things is an intensely aggressive act, and it takes a huge amount of energy. Learning how to receive it has the quality of going with the flow. Or as we say in our family, because we used to read the signs on the ski lifts backwards, flow the with go. It's one of the mantras around here is flow the with go. Now that doesn't mean be a patsy and just let everything happen to you, but it does mean life occurs. Then what? I want to turn to case 11 in the Blue Cliff record, which is my favorite title. There's several different translations, but my favorite title of this koan is Gobblers of Dregs. And this koan, in one reading of it, goes to this point of who makes the choices in our lives. Who is the way? Who can show us the way? The introduction, Engo's introduction. And I'm going to change the pronouns here just because I think, it's appropriate every once in a while. The great capacity of Buddhas and Zen masters is entirely under her control. The lifeline of humanity and divinity is totally subject to her direction. With a casual statement, even a single word, she startles the crowd and stirs the masses. With a single device, even a single object, she smashes chains and knocks off fetters. Meeting transcendental potential, she brings up transcendental matters. Now tell me, who has ever been like this? Now that's just the introduction. We'll get back to it. The case itself, and I'm going to go with Maizumi Roshi's translation as given to me by Tenshin. Obaku addressed his assembled monks and said, "You are all eaters of brewers' dregs. If you will go about like this, when can you meet today? Don't you know that in all the land of Tang there is no Zen teacher?" A monk stepped forward and said, "But surely there are those in all regions who reform monks and govern assemblies of disciples." Obaku said, "I didn't say there is no Zen, only that there is no teacher of Zen." Okay, that ends the case. And then the verse, which is a poem that follows these cases in the Blue Cliff Record, written by Secho. The verse is cold, severe. His solitary mien does not take pride in itself. Solemnly dwelling in the sea of the world, he distinguishes dragons and snakes. Even the emperor of China was treated lightly. Thrice he personally ran afoul of those claws and fangs. All right, so little bit to unpack in this one. Really a beautiful, beautiful koan. So let's look at the case itself to start. Baku said to his assembled monks, "You are all eaters of brewers' dregs." Now, dregs, as most of us know, are the sediment, what's left in the bottom of a bottle of liquid, wine or beer. In this case, probably rice wine. You are all gobblers of brewers' dregs, or eaters of brewers' dregs. If you go on like this, when can you meet today? Or where can you meet today? It depends on the translation. You could also say, how will you meet today? Okay, so the question here, and this is poetic in itself too. What are we talking about? Gobblers of dregs, eaters of dregs. Okay, this is an allusion to, if you are here, if we are here to imitate the masters, just imitate the masters, say the right things, do the right things, chant the right things, read the right things, think the right things. If this practice of ours is at that level of imitation and going through the motions, that puts us in the place of eating what's left over rather than experiencing the fine wine of life, rather than experiencing the beauty and power of this practice. It's like the other koan in the Mumonkan, Seize the Poor, where the teacher says, you have just drank the 3 cups of the finest Hakka wine and still you claim that your lips are not wet. Okay, this goes to the point of life and the practice and the beauty and the personal power that we have is right here in front of us to express and experience fully. So don't get caught in the weeds and the brambles. Don't just be imitating the form. Don't be an eater of dregs, a gobbler of dregs. Be it. Manifest it. Don't you know that in all the land of Tang, there is no Zen teacher, or in all of China, there is no teacher of Zen? Okay, what is this about? What do you mean there's no teacher? I mean, here I sit. I'm the teacher at Prajna Heart Zen Center. And in an hour, Tenshin Roshi will sit on the seat there and be the Roshi of Zen Mountain Center. We begin our practice, we sit zazen, we might engage in koan study or shikantazu or counting our breaths. We might go on and do Jukai. Some of us might do Tokado, novice priest, go on and do Shoso Hosen and full ordination and continue on to keep working. And we're working through all these koans in a curriculum, right? And then somebody says, yeah, you can teach, or you should teach, or you're teaching. And so you're a teacher. And here it says, there is no Zen teacher. Don't you know this? And so the monk steps forward and says, but wait a minute. There's all these people in all the regions of China governing zendos and zen centers and monasteries and guiding monks. You know, isn't that teaching? What do you mean there are no teachings? There are no teachers. How can that be? And Abaku responds very, very cleverly saying, I did not say there is no Zen. I said there are no teachers of Zen. And what does this mean? Asks a teacher. It goes back to this matter of choice. Who will choose how you live your life and live this practice? Is it me? Is it tension? Is it some other teacher that you will go find and follow? Even if you take that tact, even if you go, Dan, Shiro, what should I do? You know, how do I do this? I can point the way. I can point to the texts. I can point to all the dregs. But it's up to you to taste the wine. It's up to each of us to taste the wine. And there's no us and them in this either, right? I am in this with you because I am here as a gobbler of dregs in a certain sense as well, going through the forms. And it is the push of my teacher as well. Don't come in looking for approval, Tension says. What I'm looking for is it. You know? Be it. And so we work together, and I will always be here and share what I know and point the way and say, hey, why not when you turn the ignition off, do a moment of Zazen, and when you put the key in, do a moment of Zazen. But Andrea's got to do the moment of Zazen. You know, Andrea has to go on this journey. Each of us has to go on this journey. Each of us has to commit to discovering our own essential nature. Because no one of us can be that kind of teacher for each other. No one of us can say, this is who you are. I mean, even the beautiful picture of Philip and Roma sitting there, right? Roma is not Philip and Philip is not Roma. And they each have their own path through the world. And he as a father, if he's doing it right, is a great guide, right, Roma? But he can't lock her down. Can he, Ken? You've got a couple of daughters. Yeah. For anyone else around us. Now, when we experience the wine in this way, this is where the introduction comes in, because this is really talking about the result. Tennessee is drinking that pure wine of her own essential nature. And as such, all the capacity of all the Buddhas and all the Zen masters, all the ancestors are entirely in her command. When you go for it, when you live into who you fully are, all of this 2,600 years of teachings are yours. You are the teacher in who you're being, in how you're being, and what you're being. The great capacity of Buddhas and Zen masters is suddenly under her control. And then any casual statement or even a single word that Tal utters can startle the crowd and stir the masses. We each have this kind of power if we let it be. For Mark, the lifeline of all humanity and divinity is totally subject to his direction, because Mark is the direction. And Marsh, with a single device, even a single object, she smashes chains and knocks off fetters. In her own actions, in her own being, in her own manifestation of her pure self, she shatters delusions and frees all around her. This is sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. And Galen, when he meets somebody of transcendental potential, knows how to meet that person where they are, preaching in response. What's the right choice? What's the right reaction to things as they occur in our lives? How do you teach? Up, down, horizontal. Where do you meet people? Now tell me, who has ever been like this? Shall I? All right. So you see what I'm doing here too, and I encourage you as you go on in your practice, take these things like this introduction that was written, centuries ago, and bring it forward and make it real. What does this mean for me right now? How do I put myself in this place? In the verse, cold, severe, and solitary, it does not take pride in itself. Okay, this is being the teacher, but not having pride in being the teacher. Being the teacher without being the teacher. A man of no rank. Dwelling in the sea of the world, he distinguishes dragons and snakes. This is seeing clearly, seeing things as they are. Distinct from each other, even as they are all together. And then this last bit in the verse, even the emperor of China was treated lightly. Thrice he personally ran afoul of those claws and fangs. So this is talking about the claws and fangs of a Baku, and his teaching in this by saying there is no teacher. And as it is told, the emperor of China was slapped 3 times by a Baku. And if you read into it further, it's again going to this, even an emperor has no superiority. Even someone of lower rank in ancient China is not lower in any way. It's a statement of leveling. And when you go from that place, because Secho is really summarizing this koan, there is no teacher because you are the teacher. There is no teachings because you are the pure essence. When I asked you at the end of Zazen to expand your awareness and your sense of compassion to include those few names we know, and I'm sure all of you are starting to hear of people testing positive in your own circles. It's a simple act and you're sitting there, but all of a sudden you expand your sense of self to include all others. And when you do, you include all the Buddhas and all the ancestors. I have to find this specific quote. This is from the commentary on the koan. Tenkei, about the verse, says, everyone has an essence that has no teacher. And I just think that's a beautiful summary of this koan and of all of you. Look, I'll keep playing my role. We keep doing our jobs. We keep doing the practice. We show up when we say we'll show up. We sit. We're committed to the practice. But in the end, Every one of us has a natural essence that has no teacher. We just need to practice that. And when we do, the power is limitless. So I'm going to share a little video clip here. And yell at me really fast if all of a sudden you can't hear anything. You seeing a screen, black screen at the moment?
But again, it's just in terms of the masses, you just think, well, how can this be possible? But you find a way. And that's the thing with practice, it's not rational, it's not linear. You know, it's like, why does sit in hell? You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. But it does. It does, it really helps. Because there's other elements that we don't recognize. There's other powers that we have that we don't recognize that match that encompass that. You know, this to encompass that is an amazing thing. And then again, it's just like with us as we move down or up these pitches of the ox herding pitches, is that you see that the capacity of the human mind is universal.
So that's from the recent work that Nick and I had the privilege of doing with Tenshin Roshi. But you know, look at how human and limitless that expression is, right? How can this address this? Now, in that picture of the ox herding series, the ox represents your true self, and the boy, the child with the tether to the ox is coming to terms and understanding the relationship between perceived self and true self, between boy and ox. And as you go later through the pictures, they're completely integrated. But then Tenshin goes on to talk about the limitless power and potential of the human mind, the human experience. And that's big mind he's talking about, not thought, but our experience of the world. So I think I'll stop there. It feels like time to stop, but I would love to hear from you or answer any questions anybody has. And I'll leave it to you to unmute and jump in. And please do jump in, because there is no teacher of Zen other than all of you.
Thank you, Shiro, for that amazing talk. You reminded me I spent 5 of my very formative years in New York from ages 17 to 22. And I didn't even realize how many subway stories I had. And I actually remember an experience that I had that was really similar to one of my experiences in Zazen. In Sesshin, I mean. And like just projecting onto everybody else exactly what my interior landscape was, only realizing later, you know, what we realize, which is like, that's all me, you know, that's all a figment of my doing. And it was only years later, I was like, oh, it's like this really paranoid person, you know. Anyway, it was some interesting memories. I learned a lot on that subway.
Me too. Yeah, you're right there rubbing up against it all the time. Mm-hmm. And it feels like you're rubbing up against other people, but who are you really rubbing up against, Tennessee?
Well, yourself and the world.
Yeah.
Human nature.
Yeah. There's always that thing going on, you know? Is it really the other person, or is it you that's causing the joy or the discomfort? Yeah. Every time I go back, I ride the trains. Everybody thinks I'm crazy, but you know, I'm like, easiest way to get around. Of course, now with COVID, it's a little different. All right. Thank you, Tennessee. Go, Melissa.
I love that talk. I love the idea of there is no teacher, and that really you are your own teacher at the end of the day. That yeah, we have these moments of practice, but there's so much more time in between the times that we sit. And that is the true practice, is like, how are you going to be in all the little moments of your day? And I feel like that's a continued theme for us in general, but every time it really makes a difference for me. What stood out the most is, I'm not going to quote it correctly, but you said that part about you've had 3 cups of wine, but you say that your lips aren't wet. That's something that I feel like in my life comes up a lot. It's like, once I get a certain thing, then I just want the next thing, again and again and again, whether it be in a relationship or at work or, anything in my life, I'm always looking for what the next thing is. And I think that as a human, that's what we do. But so it's almost impossible to stop doing that. But the important thing is what you mentioned, Dan, just being appreciating the moment, like appreciating what we have now, instead of just always saying, my lips aren't wet, where's the next thing? So that really stood out to me. So thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. And imagine Obaku back with a monastery full of monks going, what are you doing sitting here, you eaters of dregs, gobblers of dregs? That's a pretty direct confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how will you do this today? Yeah, thank you.
The stories of the subway reminded me of an experience I had about, I guess it was probably last week. I walked outside a gas station at night, and there was a guy just kicking the wall and screaming, and he started walking around, the gas station, yelling at the sky, and I didn't know what was going on. He was, very erratic, and I was thinking, okay, I need to not make eye contact, because then I'm going to get his attention and he's going to come after me. But at some point I did catch his glance, and then he started trudging towards me, and I'm like, oh boy, like, what's going to happen? I was very much afraid of what was going to happen in that moment, but I just stood there and let's see where this goes. And he got up to me and he said, he was kind of almost crying, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And I kind of felt like I needed to calm him down. So I just thought, I don't think you did anything wrong. And, I guess that's what maybe he needed to hear. Then he hugged me, and so I just hugged him, and I was still afraid as that was happening. I thought, okay, when's the knife going to come out? That's what I was expecting the whole time. But it didn't. And I'm just thinking, I'm glad I had that experience, with him, and I didn't stay in my fear, and in that way kind of stay separated from him, leaving him into whatever, chaos he was experiencing in his mind. So just an example of how our assumptions, don't always turn out to be true.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Yeah, that fear, there's real fear, like, all of a sudden a car is coming at you, or there's a loud bang, or, that is built into us as a survival mechanism. But then there's the fear that we conjure, and that often is based on, baggage, bias, expectation. I've got a lot of stories myself on that. I really appreciate you sharing that, because then often you get on the other side of the experience and go, well, but that wasn't what I expected at all. And there's a huge lesson in that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. And thanks for reaching out and, being brave enough, especially in this age of no contact,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hello.
No.
Thank you for the Dharma Talk. That's pretty nice. Yeah, I guess what comes to my mind is how do we have the wisdom to operate in the space where, okay, I take full responsibility for my life. I take full responsibility for the way that I move in the world and my perspective, and then also not entering I guess the other side of that, which is like being self-righteous or becoming like a megalomaniac, or sort of like I always know best, you know, and closed off to the wisdom of other people around us. Like, how do we, yeah, that's what comes to my mind.
Yeah. And I mean, you just negated the answer to that, but what is the answer?
I mean, to be, you know, I guess like the other thing that comes to my mind is like the precepts. You know, the precepts are very much like, hey, these are good, so you better do them. I mean, not you better do them, but a little bit like you will see the wisdom of them if you spend time with them. But then yeah, I don't know, like what, yeah, where is the line between like, okay, the precepts are a good check on us, kind of thing, but then also like I ultimately I have to choose for myself what is the way that I'm living this.
Yeah. Yeah, part of this is what I was touching on, my own discovery about the difference between control, megalomaniac, all control, and seeing that I have choice. Because in that distinction, Philip, is the remaining open to the wisdom of others. I mean, you said it in there. You said it in there. And the practice of sitting zazen and letting go of attachments and letting go of thought and expanding your sense of self to include other, by its very nature, makes you open to the wisdom of others. And it also gives you the clarity to see the folly that's out there. Some quick PG editing there. Yeah. Yeah, you know, the scrubbing of the bulls, right? Because as soon as you start believing yourself too much, that's another form of the eating the dregs, right? All of a sudden you've closed off the possibility of new experience because you've already predetermined what it's supposed to be, how it should look, what you know about it. You know, that's trading the wine for the dregs. Yeah, but you said it, it's that practice of opening. And the precepts are a great guideline for how to live, but Zazen and the practice, repeated and consistent, is the cleaning up that allows you to be open. It's an open vessel. Yeah, thanks. It's really, I mean, it's a good area to keep working. Good area to keep working, because the more you know and the more you attain, it's easy, right? All of a sudden, like, well, yeah, I got this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the danger is like, wow, why do I need a teacher for?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't need a teacher. I know, you know, and like,
Yeah.
those are not generally the people that always make the most compassionate decisions in their life.
Yeah, and it's exactly why I wanted to pick this koan. I mean, there's a paradox in it, right? Here I am telling a Sangha full of people, you know, of which I am the teacher, you know, that there are no teachers, you know, but we're all teachers, and the tradition and the practice and the Dharma is a teacher. And, you know, my job is to help point the way, provide those guardrails, open some doors, you know? And
Yeah, I've definitely taken to, because I feel like in the Dharma talks that I listen from Tenshin Roshi, that's something he says a lot. Like, you're gonna have to decide this yourself. Like how to like, you have to live your life.
Yeah.
And even in my own teaching, I think the practice has influenced me to be a little bit more like, okay, well, ultimately, like, I can't learn Spanish for my students. I already know Spanish. Like,
Yeah.
they're the ones that have to learn Spanish. You know, there's no amount of my personal experience that is going to magically give them this ability. You know, like, I can point them towards different experiences that can help them gain this ability, but like, they're the one that has to do the journey.
Yep, you got it. Applies to that beautiful person next to you too. I mean, right, Roma? Because I mean, now I don't want to get in trouble here, Philip, but I'll go for it anyway. You know, I mean, Roma, you want dad going, do this, do this, do this, do this, don't do this, don't do this, do this, do this, don't do this, do this, do this, do this. I mean, does that sound like a fun day?
No, not at all.
Yeah, because you've got a life to live. Now, are there times when you want his protection?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and his guidance.
Hmm.
And then there's times when you're going to think he's an idiot too, I promise. But then you got to remember that he's generally a pretty wise guy and forgive him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it goes to how we work with everyone around us. You know, at a certain point, I realized in raising Nick that for me, it was not to do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this, not that strict precept, 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 but like, live your life, and there's this path you're going to walk down, and viewing my job as opening as many doors as possible for him to discover what was on the other side. And then a couple that were marked death and danger, put the padlock on it, because that is our job too. So, for what it's worth.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I figure you've got that pretty well, Philip. You know, good dad.
I was hoping to just say I really appreciated the story about the two drunks in the subway.
Yeah, I thought you would.
And, you know, somewhere I read, I'm sure, because that Avalokiteshvara is the bodhisattva who hears the cries of the world. And that when there is a drunk laying in the street that needs help, Avalokiteshvara will appear as another drunk to help him, because it's not a question of knowing best for somebody else. It's just a question of seeing what's in front of you and knowing what to do, because you relate to the circumstance. You know, the teachers in this lineage, in this practice, for me, have it. The longer I watch people teach, the more impressed I am with the dedication to try. You know, it's a question of trying, knowing full well that you can't do it. You know, you can't say it. You can't teach what hasn't been taught, and that the source of another's freedom is not going to be from you. It's going to be from them. They're going to have to find it there. But here are people who've taken a vow to save all sentient beings. What? I mean, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and yet they keep doing it. You know, they keep doing it, and it's been going on like that for how long? 26, 2,700 years, maybe longer than that now. It seems like the Buddha in the beginning said, okay, I had this realization, but I don't think I can teach this. I don't think anybody will ever understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And apparently, Indra, in the form of higher mind, came and said, try.
Yeah.
Go out and try. And the things that I think I learned most from my teachers are things like what seems like unbelievable patience with I find myself reacting to questions going, God, that's the dumbest thing anybody, what? How come? Just swat that person down, and yet the patience keeps coming through. And then I get to look at myself and go, man, if you're going to be effective in trying to help people, you're going to have to develop that kind of trait too. So, thank you for your effort. Thank you for your practice. It was a great thought.
You're welcome, Galen, and thank you for the very generous characterization of my insobriety as being Avalokitesvara. It was I got to tell you, it was a profound moment.
Yeah.
To watch somebody collapse onto the floor of a moving train. And there was really no thought involved in getting up and helping him, but that intimate contact of lifting him back up onto the seat and then settling back down across the way. It was like, boom, no space in there at all. No separation. No separation. So thank you. That's very generous.
It's a little after 11.
Yeah, I know. Kenny? Anything?
Nothing to add. I've had my share of public, interactions with people who needed help. And what really surprised me was in this one incident, which took place in the parking lot of Ralph's, when I went to this person who seemed to have just fallen down, 2 or 3 other people came. In fact, one woman got her phone out and called 911, and then she and I stayed there before so the EMTs knew where to go. And as it turns out, this guy had just been let out of a rehab place and was homeless, obviously, and hadn't had any food or anything, and he just collapsed. But what got me was that out of the cars came people, so that was amazing to me.
Yeah, beautiful. And part of that is how big a sense of self you have. Again, there was very quickly, because I know we're running out of time. Very quickly, there was a research study done with soccer or football fans in England, and in one instance, they brought in 2 groups of people, and they kind of got them all riled up and revved up about being fans of one particular team, Manchester United, or I'm not very good at the British teams, but two opposing teams. And then they released them all toward the stadium, and they had an actor collapse, just like you said, in the middle of the crowd, right? But he was wearing a Manchester jersey. And the people that were Manchester fans were faster to help the person than the other team. Then they repeated the experiment with 2 opposing teams, but what they got everybody riled up about and enthused about is this sport of football. It's the best sport in the world. And look at the and we are all football fans. And then they ran the same experiment, right, with an actor falling down, and it didn't matter what jersey they were wearing anymore. People from both teams responded in equal numbers because all of a sudden they weren't separating themselves by team, but uniting themselves as soccer fans. And so that opportunity to be Avalokitesvara or Kuan Yin is a choice for all of us too. It's just how big are we? Who are we? Because in the biggest sense, it includes everyone. And then picking someone up is as simple as getting up yourself. All right. One last chance, anyone, and then we'll
I actually have something really quick.
see. She always, it's like here she is.
I'm sorry. I know it's time for everybody to go, but I remembered a situation when I was 14. I was walking around in downtown Spokane, Washington, and this old man, I mean, he's probably my age now, but he just fell down, right near me. And I just rushed over to pick him up. And he waved me away and yelled at me, "Don't go." He said, "Go away, leave me alone. Don't leave me alone." And I was just being an open-hearted kid. Of course, if he was like the age of my grandparents, if my grandfather fell over, I'd be picking him up right away. And it taught me a lot about just really recognizing that not everybody is available to be helped and that they've got things going on and that I needed to be watchful and careful of other people's feelings in that situation. And to be effective really took more than just acting on impulse, but rather to really size up the situation and see if there was something I could do in another way. It was interesting for a 14-year-old to have that experience, I thought.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Ready? Ready to do some vows? Save all sentient beings? All right.